Today I want to talk to you about intentionally close-up photography, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that can be accomplished. Well, hello and welcome to another session of intentional photography. You'll forgive me for not posting last week. I was a bit under the weather, and speaking of weather, it didn't want to cooperate either. So yes, I owe you folks that are following me an episode, and I will make that up for you shortly, I hope. But today I thought I would go back to one of my favorite things, actually. One of my favorite things being close-up or macro photography. Today I'm going to stay pretty close to the house, but what you need to know is when we built our house, the property had been woods for over 100 years. And I said, give me a yard that is about 20 feet around the house, clear out my driveway, and don't touch another tree on the property. Well, that was 25 years ago, so the woods have encroached again. And as you see me standing in the edge of the woods, I'm actually standing 15 feet from my front porch, probably. So you can probably tell by that I am really fond of being in the woods. And so today I'm going to show you some of the wild things, a couple things that we've planted. Actually just one thing that we've planted, and the rest are going to be wild things that I find, and I'm probably not going to go further than 100 feet away from the house today to see what we can find. But you know, there's an entirely different world when you start looking at things really close up, and that's one of the reasons why macro or close up is one of my favorite types of photography, because you can always find something of interest. When you can't make it out, like in lockdown, you can't go out and do the mountains that I love to, or the beach that I love as well. You can always find things right around you, regardless of how small your yard might be. There's probably something of interest if you start looking in the small spaces, and surely things you can find there. So that said, let me give you a bit of a video tour, and then we'll look at some of the shots that we've taken after we've identified the items that we're going to use. And here we have one of the planted items. You'll forgive me, this is handheld, so a bit wobbly. This is, you probably recognize it as lily of the valley. We have a small patch of that here just across from the front yard. So that is my planted thing that I wanted to share with you. One of the other items is a wild rose that decided to plant itself here in the yard, but we've just kind of let it grow, and as you can see, it has bloomed very well this year in a number of places. So we'll take a look at that up close and personal to see how they really are, what's really there. And I don't know that this video camera is going to catch it because I have such a small lens on it, but I hear some squirrels or a woodpecker being very active just to the right of me. Well, no luck with that. He took off as soon as he saw my face, as soon as I could get turned in that direction. And that's often the case, but I came out here to one of the wild blackberry bushes that is on the property, and so there was a little bit of interest here. And that's another one of the items we'll take a look at up close and personal. And here, this is the log that's featured prominently in a couple of my videos. I came out this way on the property because just past the log, out in the woods just there, maybe 50 feet away, a few years ago was a lady slipper, which is a type of wild orchid that grows here in Virginia. And I was on my way to see if that has come up yet or if it's still there. And on my way I found this. It appears as if something has been having a bit of a lunch. And so I looked at that, although it has definitely been chewed on fairly vigorously. But it left some interesting things to look at, along with the texture of the moss. So that's another one of the items we'll be looking at. And just feet from that here is another mushroom that I'm not sure if that's what has taken the notch out of that, but that looked just interesting enough for a shot or two. I didn't get down. It's so low to the ground, as you can see. I have my camera on a selfie stick, and I may be able to do more with this than I was able to do with my DSLR. So that was a bit of interest. So let's take a look at those things. And before I do that, I want to show you the two ways that I took close-up pictures. So let's get to that tutorial part of the video right now. Today I've used two cameras. On my Nikon I have a 70 to 300 zoom that has macro capability from 180 to 300 millimeters. At 300 millimeters it gives you a 1:2 ratio macro. I wonder if a true macro needs to be 1:1, but anyway, the manufacturer calls it macro. It does give you the ability to do really nice close-ups. Although it does limit you, you still need about 9 inches for the lens to focus properly. But you'll see the examples of what that is. On my Pentax, I've got an 18 to 200, no macro, just my normal 18 to 200. And a bit about that. You know, my normal lens for my Nikon is an 18 to 270. The all-in-ones, you carry one lens, it can do so many things. There are times when a prime lens is needed for a particular job, and I do have a prime lens that or a few prime lenses that I use when the situation calls for it. You know, you're not going to get a 1.4, an f1.4 zoom lens. It's just not going to happen. So you have to decide what are you going to use the most, what does your budget allow you, and work accordingly. So anyway, back to the all-in-one here, the 18 to 200. It's not a macro lens. So to fix that, I have a little, really it's called a filter. It's called different things. I've heard it called a diopter. This particular thing calls itself a close-up 10 plus macro, and it's a Vivitar Series 1 lens. It just screws onto the front of the lens, the camera lens, as any other does. But this is 10x magnification. So with this, and I do have some footage shooting with this you can get up to about 2 inches from your subject and do some really close work. Now, on certain times it does have some distortion, and I'll talk about that as we look at the pictures, but 2 inches. And now I priced these on Amazon. You can get one for $25, but I'm sure it's probably made plastic, and your pictures, your images are not going to be any better than the glass you use. Now, the good ones, one like this, runs around $80 now, but it's still not near the price of a macro lens. So if you want to do the close-up work, but you don't want to have the macro price, then I suggest maybe you look at one of these. I actually picked this up from KEH, which is a camera broker out of Georgia that I've spoken of before. I don't get any money from them. It's just they've always treated me right, and I've gotten good gear from them. And in fact, I think everything you see here, including the camera you can't see that I'm recording from, all came from KEH. Really good products, really good prices, so I recommend it. I think I picked this up for roughly half price from KEH. So do your shopping, and you don't have to break the bank. You don't have to have a macro lens, a specialty lens, to do this type of work. So with that said, as always, let's go to the post-processing. Let's look at what the images look like and see what the finished products are. You've seen the footage, and I thought about embedding the images in with the footage this week, but I thought, no, let's work through them all at once and talk about the different cameras, the different lenses that were used, and examine that a little bit more closely at post-production. As we look at these prints, remember that we're talking of depths of fields that are measured in the fraction of an inch. If the camera moves as much as 1/8 of an inch as I depress the shutter button, it's going to change the focus. Because of this, sometimes we're going to miss. Maybe we're going to miss a lot. But there's an old adage that says a photographer never has a bad image. That's with the provision that they're all deleted before anybody gets a chance to see them. Now, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to be bold enough to show you some of the images that probably should never see the light of day, but I'm also going to explain to you why I'm showing them. This image shouldn't be here for innumerable reasons, but I did mention there were lily of the valley, so I had to put at least a couple pictures, but I'll be honest, there are just a couple, and neither one of them is much good. Where to even start with this one? Only one blossom is in focus, and that's the wrong one. If it had been the upper one, that would have been almost excusable. And isn't that spider web interesting and exquisite? But does it lead your eye into or out of the frame? Therein lies another part of the problem. So why would I put myself through all of this? Well, it's for the sake of education. Don't you learn more from your mistakes sometimes than you do from your successes? I'm trying to share that with you. Let's move to the wild blackberry. I know I'm doing these out of order compared to the video, but there's a reason for that which will become readily apparent shortly. This image was taken with the Nikon with the macro lens at 300 millimeters. Notice that even within the blossom that is the primary part of the subject, even the petals are beginning to be out of focus. So you see how small, how shallow that depth of field is when you're working with macro. This is another Nikon image, this time at 185 millimeters. You'll notice this is that same blossom, but it's just slightly out of focus, while the stamen, would you call it, that's already lost its petals in front, is what has become in very sharp focus. So just changing that changed the point of focus and also very much the depth of field. So when you're using macro, be mindful of that. And actually, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, that oak flower that is dropped across the leaves may be the sharpest item within the picture. So miss this one just slightly. This is the first of the images that are taken from the Pentax. This is with the lens at 18 millimeters using that 10x filter on it. To give you extremely short depth of field, as you can see. The flower in the center, it's in such close, crisp focus that you can see the veins and the petals and so forth, but yet the center of the flower is beginning to be out of focus because it stands just high enough off of the flower petals that it's out of the depth of field. So this shows you how much that macro feature adds just by screwing that lens on. And this is, it's like I said, just at 18 millimeters. So if I had gone in with any of the zoom on the lens, you can imagine what we have. In fact, we'll look at that in some of the other pictures that we're seeing. But I think this is a really good choice for the first one to show you what the Pentax and that screw-on filter is capable of doing. This is another Pentax image, again at 18 millimeters with the 10x filter. This one would definitely have gotten deleted, but I kept it for a particular reason. I had to go into post-processing and really do a lot of work to make this usable at all. Notice that petal that's kind of pointing towards 930. That is completely blown out. I should have used a neutral density filter because I couldn't darken it down enough to be able to do what I needed to do, given that I was using that extra filter. So keep that thing in mind. But it's completely blown out, but I bothered to do the post-processing because the center of the flower interests me, but most of all, notice that spider sitting there. That made it worth the difference, but it's completely blown out. That should have been fixed in camera, but I did everything I could given the circumstances, and I wanted to try to get the shot anyway. I think the stark contrast maybe makes it a bit usable, but I'm going to have to admit it's questionable because of that blown out area and that back pedal there. What do you think? Filed this one under "You Can't Always Get Nature to Cooperate." The idea began as trying to take that blossom in the center of the frame kind of from sideways to see the height of the center and still get the petals a bit. But just as I was about to take it, I noticed that ant crawling there. And so I pushed just a little bit to change the focus with the depth of field and nudged the camera just the slightest bit and changed it. And I got the ant. But the problem is I didn't look very well ahead of time. Notice that leaf. It's very distracting. The oak trash underneath and the little vine. Ideally, you would set up, look exactly what you're doing, and take the leaf out of the frame, clean up the other things. But if I had bothered to do all that, that ant definitely was not going to stay put. So let's see what happens with the next frame. So this is the same image, but just a square crop works wonders. It removed that distracting leaf trash, and the ant becomes almost a secondary subject. When you're in post-processing, sometimes we need to be looking for the image within the image, because otherwise a very usable shot might get deleted. I'm going to have to leave it here for now. I try to keep these videos under 15 minutes, but I promise you the best is yet to come. Please tune in just a few days. I won't wait another week, and you'll see part 2 of this. And I promise you, I meant it when I said the best is yet to come. So you've seen the images. What do you think? Does the macro lens do a better job, or does the macro filter do a better job? Let me know. Drop me a line in the comments. Tell me which you think is better. Tell me what you think I could do better to make these more interesting. Tell me what you appreciated about what I'm already doing. If you liked the video, please click the thumbs up. If you're interested in seeing the rest of my stuff, then please subscribe. I'd love to hear from you, but most of all, thanks for watching.